Hey everybody, great to be with you. I'm Francis Hunt, the Market Sniper. I'm going to start a little bit left of field today. I'm going to take our fellow, largely American viewers base on a journey to across the pond, let's say, to the United Kingdom. Many of you may have traveled as tourists. Many of you will have family members that are either Scottish, maybe Irish, Northern Irish, or English, Welsh, you name it. But the United Kingdom and America, the special relationship, which seems to be more about the dark state and the history of the colonies and America's escape from under Britain's rule, or so we thought, because of the Tea Party. Yes, whatever the cause, whatever the history, I'm going to take you to a journey to the Empire of London and beyond in the other fields. And I'm going to talk about something socio-political for a short spell. Because actually, this is a video about gold and why you need gold right now. But first, the journey. The journey is one of burning cars, riots, people running around with pikes, knives, various forms of ad hoc weapons. You'll see the burning vehicle here that I'm highlighting on a tweet from one of my friends that I respect, who often finishes my sentences for me and me for him in terms of all things reset. And before I could put pen to paper and try to clumsily put down what's actually happening in the United Kingdom, that some of those of you in the States will be wondering about, Chris had already got his tweet out. And I'm going to refer to his tweet a little bit before going into why it absolutely points to gold. And the key quote I will be bringing you back that Chris makes, that I've chosen to lift out. I will be showing you why I've lifted that out. But let's get some of the detail. First of all, UK riots are not what they think you are. Here's a deeper dive that is offering. Now, many of you who understand sound money will also know something of the Hegelian dialectic. This is something I've referred to many times with my thesis, antithesis, and the end result is the synthesis through the middle that they sought all along. Very good at giving you left argument, right argument, controlling both, handing the power ball supposedly from left hand to right hand, when in fact they are wings of the same bird. So, what did Chris say? Well, I'm going to skip. There's a lot that said, and you're welcome to check the link below, give him a follow on Capitalist Exploits and ourselves on the Market Sniper. But let's just get to the brass tacks of what's going on. The mass importation of people of different cultures is being designed to disrupt the indigenous society. Now, many of you in America, as you go into an election, will know that actually Donald Trump has positioned himself as the deportation versus the Democrats as the immigration open borders policy. I wouldn't get overly excited on the potential outcomes of that, but at least he's talking maybe the better game that will tempt you to get engaged in the voting system. I'm afraid, again, this is left hand versus right hand, and you will not get as much as you hope in that regard, but you might play the game of lesser evil. Again, I suggest to you, it's not quite as good as even the lesser evil sounds. But let's follow through. What is the plan with this unchecked mass immigration and who is behind it? The next step was to implement propaganda and laws forbidding any criticisms of this policy. So it's called the racism trap, basically. Anybody who criticizes, hey, you brought in a few too many people, you're flushing too many of them into this area, they are not integrating in the same way as us, they've got their own ways. There's a naturalization process. There's a point where you assume some of the standard basic principles of being an American or being British, where we do things in a certain way and we respect other people's rights to do them in the same way. We're now at the stage where provocateurs are running wild. Many of these provocateurs, I'm afraid to say, are paid orchestrators for bad events. In other words, this points to a greater game. Having just experienced the Trump lone gunman shot dead Patsy events recently, I think many of you will have realized, whether you agree with my take or not on what might have happened, that things are not quite what they seem. And forces that should be working for you may in fact have agendas of their own. This won't come as a surprise, and I'm happy to leave it just there at this point. But provocateurs are around, both on the Islamic Muslim side, in their communities in the United Kingdom, and of course amongst the working class white, for which that many people are hungry to sow discontent and galvanize and channel in a specific direction who you should be angry at. The next step we're moving through is the implementation of an absolute police state. So you will have seen lots of videos on X and others of police forces going to natural indigenous British people and wanting to make arrests around and questioning around a Facebook post that may be disgruntled surrounding the immigration policy. At the same time, the other parties that are new citizens are running around smashing car windows in with lead pipes and threatening all and sundry. And there will be this two-tier policing. This is a phrase you'll start to hear. It'll come from the UK, that will seem to point to a certain degree of governmental and police statist institutions not being entirely down the middle, but showing a particular bias. Again, bear with me. I will be bringing this all back to gold in a minute. But this is the social unrest that is going on. A full-blown surveillance state. The new Prime Minister, a World Economic Forum candidate that has now been made the United Kingdom Prime Minister, has come forward to talk about the rise of this far right that is nothing but thuggery, without making reference to the removal of many welfare benefits on the working class whites, to the tune of reallocating housing to new immigrants, where other people are made to wait on a waiting list. The policing, for which he was a district prosecutor, where he avoided a grooming gang that was involved with drugging and raping of working class white females in many, many areas, on account that it would be perceived as a racist and stimulate racism if they were to prosecute. This is the same Prime Minister that is now talking about right-wing thuggery. This particular tone of one-sidedness is designed to provoke and irritate and show clear and obvious bias, to create discontent in the system. Having just been elected, there is no chance of throwing him out. There's another 4 years with a deeply unpopular Tory government just having been voted out. It's prime time, and this agenda is being escalated. It's being escalated aggressively, and it has all the portents, where one of the key statements he made was biometric surveillance spatial scanning will be implemented to prevent this thuggery, this far-right thuggery, he referred to it, whilst ignoring all counterparties that were doing anything inflammatory themselves. This also followed, all these events followed, a stabbing of a military personnel and 3 young females that were stabbed by an immigrant just in the weeks gone by. Any attempt to point out this disgruntlement with conduct on TV is immediately closed down on the likes of the BBC. In short, we are witnessing the racist trap. You either fight to retain your indigenous nation and be called a racist, or you do nothing and be called a racist. This is where the politics of today is going under the World Economic Forum leaders. This is quite controversial topics for many, and I hope I'm not offending. By the way, I'm very comfortable with all people of all shapes and sizes and colors. It shouldn't have to be said. Coexisting where there is principled existence and a rule of law which everyone has accepted. But anyway, these countries where they are under these globalist forces are now finding themselves ever further under compression via the police state. This is seeing a totalitarianism come forward in a very, very strong way. There's also the participant of good guys versus bad guys, where it's quite clear. It's almost like cowboys versus Indians in the old days, a little bit less, a little bit more controversial today as to who were the good guys and the bad guys. But when we were young, it was this Hollywood characterizations of good versus bad. And now the indigenous population are in the racist trap and are always seen to be the bad guys that are facing violent and aggressive policing, whilst other forces are finding themselves with the police going down on one knee in front of them. There's certain elements of the Black Lives Matter events that America faced. So, Francis, now you've thrown all these concepts at us at politics. What on earth has this all got to do with what you were claiming to do with gold? And the key reference that I really loved that Chris dropped in to his tweet in terms of the events of the UK, and I'm afraid to say, my American friends, potentially those same events on your southern border, that seems to be affecting all Western European based nations. The key quote is, the reason the globalists are accelerating the rate of change is due to the impending debt collapse. That's right, my good friends. The social unrest has to be stoked up and coordinated and brought to a head to coincide and bring about the Great Reset, which will be a theft of wealth for all those in the West, particularly, potentially globally, but particularly aggressively to all those in the West. And the need to bring these events to the boil is on account of the mathematical fact that we are in an 100% debt-based collapse. As a reminder, Janet Yellen has been adding $1 trillion every 100 days. If you followed a YouTube that we recently had with Mr. Wang, who appeared, ex-Bank of America trader, you would notice that he drew reference to the fact that Janet Yellen had been putting 75% of that debt that she was adding, that excess debt, that excess expenditure that was being put on the credit card America, into short-term debt instruments to stop the possibility of pushing the rates on the long end of debt. Now, some of you might wonder, what's he talking about? That gets confusing. When you sell a new debt instrument that is yourself borrowing, to which you are committing to service an interest rate, you can put it out on 30 years, you could put it out on 20 years, 10 years. You're offering a package at the end of the 30-year, 20-year, or 10-year period, which is typical long-term debt. You pay the capital value back. Because of inflation, the interest rates are typically higher on the longer-term debt. Janet Yellen has been putting them on the short-term bills. That's like 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, and short-term bills. 75% of that trillion is going on the short-term credit card, not the long-term mortgage of the house, but on the short-term credit card, and those bills need turning over and over, plus new debt is coming all along. Gentlemen, ladies, you are watching this video to try get an insight on where we are in the world and what you should be doing about it. Let me tell you simply that you are in the throes of a debt collapse. They needed these interest rates to come down with this recent crash. You are all warning. It's up because of the debt. They will tell you about the carry trade and the excessive borrowing in Japanese yen that's seen the unwind as we go risk off, all the dollars having to be converted back into yen. They will tell you about all these aspects indeed. They will tell you about them on the basis they are covering their trails and it's just about a bit of a misallocation of funds. No, it's excessive borrowing at cheap rates through Japan that has led to excessive leverage trades chasing returns in America. In America, these returns are being chased. And what has it led to? It's led to, my friends, the markets getting ever more overextended. We have borrowed cheap in other nations' currencies to push a hyper bull alpha chasing, NVIDIA chasing, Mag 7 chasing, even T-bills purchases chasing for the higher yield. What happened that was absolutely key during this week and month was, in fact, the Japanese raising interest rates. The Bank of Japan raised interest rates, and at the same time, it was becoming more and more clear that the labor market in the US was softening. The great lie of the red-hot labor market is unraveling. The admittance that the non-farm payrolls number as released overstates the degree of employment. The ever-escalating rate of unemployment were putting the lie to the fact that the American economy was diverging from the rest of the world, being super strong. And as that lie came undone, we now have an almost certain double cut, 0.5 penciled in for September, if it doesn't happen any sooner, with further cuts to potentially follow. So at the same time as the Bank of Japan has actually increased their rates to 0.25, and those other rates are looking to come down, the differential has reduced. It's very rare that you have two central banks of major global economies moving in an opposite direction. I don't expect it to happen again very often, but at that one-shot moment, everybody who borrowed in yen now has a bigger payment at the same time as the yield on treasuries is about to go down at least 0.5% and potentially more. People who borrowed with a spread, don't forget, they won't be paying 0.25 or 0.1 in yen. There'll be a spread on that with their spread and then invested in other assets like the Mag 7, NVIDIA, the USDTs, and other potential instruments. Suddenly have to reverse that trade. So what are we seeing? We're seeing the yen carry trade unroll. Something we predicted and we warned about at July the 26th, that the USD JPY was in fact coming down. We gave three key indicators that the recession is coming and is deepening. We'd spoken about this in our community for a month, and this went out on July the 26th. This was a key call and warning that your risk-on trades were about to get hurt. It pointed out the chronic sell-off in copper. It pointed out the yield curve inversions that are starting to revert back up. The second key recession warning. And this is 100% indicator. As you come back above this blue line, we are now far closer than when this chart was done. In fact, we've already technically run the blue line and just pulled back a little bit. That you are invariably about to find out the name of the next economic crash that you're currently due to experience. And then the third aspect that we provided was, in fact, this here, the USD Japanese yen. That was with the yen already at 153. It is traded even lower as the great risk-on turns into a risk-off trade, and everybody is rushing to pay back their yens. They are selling their dollars and getting back, paying back those yens. So those that hide behind dollar milkshake theories of omnipotence of dollar are seeing that extended periods of weakness when leverage has accumulated has actually seen Bitcoin crash worse than many other asset classes such as gold in an environment where the dollar is in fact weakening. So let's take to a few of the charts. That is gold. And I want to just highlight that the worst thing that's happened to gold during this period is that at its absolute high as this crisis was building on the 2nd of August, the very highest point, it was $2,478, and today it is $2,389. That is how much you've lost in value in a major fear-off moment. 2,476 down to 2,388. It is less than $100. And if things go into a point where you continue to calm, it is in fact possible that you could get a squeeze, a return move where everything calms down a little bit. Volatility has been super high. The VIX has made new highs, only matched and superseded by CV19 and 2008. But as that comes back down, the potential to break to the upside could indeed enforce. We've seen oil getting weak, highlighting the consumer weakness in spite of an escalation of the Israeli conflict. Again, the commodity of choice is gold. Gold stands strong and is holding and is within from its highs, and I will measure this for you in front of you, is within not very far off its all-time highs that were made relatively recently. So there we go. The gold to its current level is 3.87% off all-time highs in dollar terms. Gold is off 3.87. For those that are fascinated by Bitcoin, by the way, it won't surprise me if we get the eventual debt collapse, and I keep bringing you back to that key phrase. The main story is the devaluation of debt and fiat, the seesaw that I showed you on previous Substack, the down valuation of debt, or when rates get cut, the up valuation of debt, my elbow, and the down valuation of the dollar. One of them goes down, eventually both go down under the weight of the total amount of money borrowed into existence. Too much debt, too much fiat, debt and fiat collapse equals gold as your primary savior. In one of the most highest percentage, not percentage, absolute terms, Japanese correction on the Nikkei, gold lost less than 4%. If we go and get Bitcoin up, it's not how Bitcoin will perform in the bull markets when everything is brilliant. You will be going for your assets money, your balance sheet and asset-based money at the point when you need it most. That is going to be fear and strife. And you can see relatively, and by the way, I'm not anti-Bitcoin at all, but you can see relatively that at the lows, Bitcoin had lost 32.82, and even measured to the current position of where we're at. Let's just measure it the other way around so that we get the correct reading. Bitcoin has lost 24%, whilst gold has lost less than 4% at its lowest point in that sell-off, which is commensurate to measuring it to its lowest point in the over here, which was as high as 33%. That's right. That's where the volatility, that's where the beta works against you. Of course, on the upside, you go up more, you'll have more pumpermentals. It's when you need it most that the bankers take the brollies away. And when you need it most will be when the markets are under duress, stress, and fear. And that's where the lower beta gold is superior to Bitcoin. So what have we covered here today? We've highlighted that socio-political events in the UK that are not that different from some of the events that are affecting the United States of America and other Western European nations, including the Commonwealth from Canada, Australia, New Zealand. You are seeing an ever weaponizing of the police state, the police themselves, and the politicians who are all aligned with the World Economic Forum's global agenda. The only way you save your wealth in this transition of reset that is being orchestrated against you through extreme inflation, that is taxation from the bottom up against you, putting you like a monkey on a super grease pole where you're having to run and run just to keep at the same height, those costs coming up, plus an ever-escalation tax burden coming down, marginal tax rates because of the inflation see you in bracket creep. They are hollowing out and leveling out the working middle classes that they resent. It is part of their objective and goal to do so to the West so that they can be brought down to the average income living standards of the rest of the world. This is a technological global communism that is being brought to bear upon us. You are under attack. Your government is the perpetrator, the permanent government. You can get as much involved in the left versus right as you like. Their agendas remain the same. The oligarchical technological companies that have been allowed to run near monopolies over multi-decades without antitrust laws have been building a system of surveillance finance. The biggest core freedom that you have been losing is your privacy over the last 2-3 decades, and it's about to escalate even further. The thing to retain your balance sheet in these times during a debt-based collapse will be to have under your own control, not at a bank, not in a deposit box, physical precious gold. Before I finish in total, I will do a small update on gold versus silver as the technical chartist and reset man you know me to be, and that is to divide the price of gold by the price of silver and to make a point as to why, for now, gold is your first choice. We have highlighted that what has befallen copper. You can go and read more detail on that in our Substack under the Market Sniper. In the meantime, let me explain to you that a certain element of silver's performance is also industrial. However, gold is entirely monetary. And whilst we celebrated this eventual breakdown that occurred across here, it is quite clear that the market has rallied with real momentum back up beyond, where it wouldn't surprise me to see the gold-silver ratio start to creep up. This has kicked the can further down the road for when silver starts to overperform gold. This tells me this is going to be the greatest reset of them all. We may see again approaching 90s and beyond in terms of the gold-silver ratio. This will be on an increasing gold price, and as long as that remains the case and silver is underperforming gold, we suggest you stay with the God market of real money. Precious metals, king of kings, the yellow one, gold. That is it. And with that, I would suggest to you that technically we're probably seeing some forms of upside continuation, and that this downside break has lost a lot of its meaning with recent events, given the high momentum recoil that we saw here. So overall, it would be quite likely, even though we can get a pullback in the short term, it could be quite likely that we could see a breakout of this level with further gold ounce dominance to silver. Yes, I know, silver friends, I'm a silver bull, a silver ounce holder. I have too much silver. I should have more gold. It's one thing I would change. It's better to start the bull market in precious metals, dominant gold, and then as we go through the various phases, rotate your gold into silver at a later stage as the overperformance starts to show itself to be permanent. We are looking for a breakdown through the 65. We are moving strongly away from 65 at the moment. Save in gold ounces first. The time will come. Be patient. We have to go through each and every one of the stages. The bigger the collapse, the bigger the reset. This may be a 10, it could even be a 15-year process. Be patient. Gold is king. Buy and save your future balance sheets through the buy regularly of gold ounces. And with that, I love you and leave you. We've looked at the charts. We've confirmed gold is dominant. It has no industrial component, unlike silver, in an environment where industrial activity is dropping, as it is with copper as well. And as a result, we stay with the monetary aspect, the pure monetary metal, and that it is gold. Until next time, I look forward to catching up with you. Thank you very much for watching.